Control of Congress is at stake in today's midterm elections, in addition to President Biden's agenda for the remaining 2 years left on his term. Joining me on the morning show, Chris Hand, a government law attorney and News4JAX's political commentator. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Bruce.
So both Florida and Georgia play prominently in what happens in the political play for the balance of power, perhaps Georgia more so this go-round. You have Marco Rubio running against Democrat Val Demings to retain his seat here in Florida. And Georgia, you have Raphael Warnock pitted against Herschel Walker. Let's start with the Rubio-Demings race. Florida used to be a swing state, used to be a blue state. Things have changed, and though she outraised him financially, Demings faces an uphill battle.
Well, Bruce, there are two types of factors in any campaign, those you can control and those you cannot control. And on those factors that you can control, the Demings campaign has actually been quite successful. They outraised the Rubio campaign. They've been up on television as much or more than the Rubio campaign. She's got a very compelling biography. But one of the factors you can't control is what kind of year is it? What's the overall political environment? So far in Florida, that looks like, just based on voter turnout and based on the national atmosphere, this is a year that might lean Republican. And as a result, even despite some of the things her campaign has done and how competitive they've tried to make it, even in the best of scenarios, you can fall short because of the factors you can't control.
All right, let's turn our attention to the Peach State in Georgia. Warnock, Walker in a dead heat, may not know the outcome of this until after the election because it really is so close. And in the final hours, this has turned into a very personal debate between the two.
Well, we may not know, not just because it's so close, but also because of Georgia election law, which says that if nobody gets 50% plus one on election day, the candidates have to proceed to a runoff, which is what we saw 2 years ago in the two Senate races Georgia had. So if no one gets 50% tonight, those two, presumably the top two finishers, Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker, will advance to a runoff in December to decide who will represent Georgia in the U.S. Senate. And just as it did 2 years ago, Bruce, that may decide which party has control of the United States Senate for the next 2 years.
Let's talk about the balance of power in the House and Senate. A lot of people thought that the abortion issue would be the overriding measure, but it's actually the economy.
Well, I think for very good reason. Inflation. You know, Bruce, it has been probably more than 40 years since inflation has affected an American election or really affected the American economy at all. It's been something that's been surprising. People have been taken aback by some of the price increases. They're not used to dealing with it. So it's cut very deeply as an economic issue and, of course, had very real impacts on people's lives. And I think we see this election after election. The issue that people keep coming back to is, what is my economic well-being, my family's economic well-being? And that often tends to be the decisive issue in voters choosing how to cast their ballots.
All you have to do is look at history. You look at the elder George Bush's race. I mean, he was favored early on, but the economy unseated him. Let me turn my attention to the Florida gubernatorial race. You've got the incumbent Ron DeSantis running against Charlie Crist. Charlie Crist has faced an uphill battle all along here. Ron DeSantis may very well sweep into office, but a lot of people say, is he going to stay there the entire 4 years?
Well, Bruce, the fundamentals of this governor's race have always favored Ron DeSantis. In the last 50 years, only one Florida governor who has sought re-election has not been re-elected. Ron DeSantis has raised close to $200 million, Charlie Crist about $30 million, and Ron DeSantis' approval ratings have been over that key mark of 50% for much of his term and during the election. The election has really been his to lose, and based on the early voter turnout numbers we're seeing, it seems likely that he's not going to lose it. But as you say, this is the 2022 election. A lot of speculation that Governor DeSantis, if he is reelected today, will immediately pivot and start focusing on another election that's held 2 years from now.
And Donald Trump has made it clear he's going to make a major announcement probably on November 14th from Mar-a-Lago, and he's turning his attention to Ron DeSantis, and there's a major rift that's developing between the two. In fact, Donald Trump created a moniker for Ron DeSantis.
Well, I mean, obviously, you know, and many people wondered, you know, when would former President Trump potentially announced that he was going to seek another bid for the White House. There's obviously been lots of speculation about Governor DeSantis and his potential interest in running for president. Interesting on a variety of fronts, mainly for a couple of reasons. One, you have two major figures who live in the state of Florida who are now contemplating seeking the presidency. But of course, Governor DeSantis originally arrived on the political map because of then President Trump's endorsement in the 2018 gubernatorial race. Now, just a few years later, they could find themselves opponents in a 2024 Republican presidential primary. We'll have to wait and see what the next few weeks and next few months unveil in that regard.
Donald Trump called him Ron DeSanctimonious. His attempt to take him down a few pegs?
Well, I think he's already anticipating a potential 2024 Republican primary battle. And as we saw from the last time former President Trump was engaged in a Republican presidential primary, part of his style is to take the attack right to his opponents with monikers like that. It looks like he's getting a head start on 2024.
Chris Hand, always interesting. Thanks.
Thank you, Bruce.
Appreciate you being here.